two teenagers. A peaceful Memorial Day weekend, a remote Arizona forest, where the air smelled of pine and the sky glittered with stars, but by morning that silence was shattered by the unthinkable. Found alone, lifeless, and surrounded by trees, two bright young lives ended by gunfire. What began as a camping trip turned into a crime scene, and now a community is left reeling, with more questions than answers. Who were these teenagers? What happened that night in the woods? And why has no one been held accountable yet? Welcome to the Dark Stories, where we uncover the chilling truths that hide in the shadows of everyday life. Today, we're diving deep into the mystery that rocked Arizona over Memorial Day weekend. The suspicious deaths of two high school teens found with fatal gunshot wounds in a remote forest. This is not just a tale of tragedy. It's about what justice looks like when lives are taken too soon and a community demands answers. This is Silent Pines, the mystery of two teens found dead in Arizona's wilderness. The school bell rang for the last time before Memorial Day weekend. For many, it was the unofficial start of summer. Barbecues, swimming pools, desert hikes. For two students at Arcadia High School, it was a chance to escape the city, head into nature, and breathe fresh air under the Arizona stars. These two teens, whose names are being withheld due to the sensitivity of the ongoing investigation, were both juniors, close friends, known for being kind, creative, and deeply bonded by a shared love for the outdoors. Their families described them as full of life. One loved drawing and aspired to study design. The other was a self-taught guitarist, always strumming quietly between classes. They left Phoenix for what was supposed to be a safe, simple weekend camping trip in a forest near Payson, an area known for its breathtaking pines, cool mountain air, and starry nights. But they would never return. On May 25th, 2025, the serene landscape was disturbed. At approximately 8 a.m., a passerby, a hiker who happened upon their sight, reported what appeared to be two unresponsive bodies near a makeshift fire pit. Local law enforcement arrived on scene within the hour. The area was cordoned off immediately. The teens were found with what authorities initially described as apparent gunshot wounds. There were no weapons found near the bodies. According to an early statement from the police, there were no immediate signs of a struggle, but also no clear indication of whether the wounds were self-inflicted or the result of foul play. Investigators deemed the deaths suspicious and launched a full inquiry. The forensic pathologists from the Maricopa County Office of the Medical Examiner, OME, were brought in to perform post-mortem examinations. Gunshot wounds can tell a story if you know how to read them. As documented in forensic literature, especially in references like the StatPearl's Forensic Pathology Review, experts analyze entry and exit points, type and distance of fire, abrasion collars, residue patterns, direction of bullet trajectory. In this case, both teens sustained wounds to the torso. Forensic examiners noted typical characteristics of mid to close-range fire. No contact wounds. The lack of stippling and soot ruled out a point-blank execution. Also telling, gunshot residue GSR testing revealed no significant trace materials on either teen's hands, something that might suggest they did not fire a weapon themselves. If this were a murder-suicide, the shooter would likely have GSR traces, but in this case, nothing. The crime scene was unusually clean. There was no tent, just two sleeping bags, a backpack, an extinguished fire, and scattered food packaging. Investigators noted the site appeared minimalist, but that could have matched the teens' personalities: outdoorsy, adventurous. There were no tire tracks leading into the site, but one set of partial shoe prints leading out of the forest, heading northwest toward a less traveled path. These prints have yet to be matched to any known person. No shell casings were recovered at the scene. This suggests that a revolver, or a shooter who intentionally collected evidence, might be involved. The local police were quick to partner with state investigators and the FBI. With school shootings and teen deaths under a national microscope, the case became high priority almost immediately. But one issue became clear early on: a lack of leads. No known enemies, no romantic drama, no prior arrests. Their digital footprints, texts, social media, DMs, didn't show signs of distress, threats, or mental health crises. Even worse, no surveillance cameras covered the forest road. The Maricopa County Sheriff's Office held a press conference urging the public to come forward with any tips. As of the latest update, no arrests have been made. Back in Phoenix, the halls of Arcadia High fell silent. Memorials bloomed in front of the school gates. Flowers, photos, Sharpie marker tributes scribbled across poster boards. Students cried openly in hallways. Teachers held quiet spaces for grief. Local parents organized a candlelight vigil. Hundreds came. The principal read the victims' names aloud. A guitarist played one of the deceased's favorite songs. This was no ordinary tragedy. It struck a chord that rippled through the city. According to the Maricopa County OME's 2022 report, firearm-related deaths accounted for a staggering number of both homicides and suicides in the county. Among adolescents aged 13 to 17, suicide was the leading manner of death. Hanging was the most common method. Firearms were the second most frequent. This raises chilling questions. Were these teens victims of an outside assailant? Or is it possible, though deeply painful, that one or both teens were involved in a suicide pact? The absence of clear evidence continues to cloud the investigation. The OME's final ruling on manner of death is still pending. The possibilities remain: homicide, suicide, or undetermined. News outlets around the country picked up the story. People magazine ran the headline: 2 Arizona teens found dead from gunshot wounds amid camping trip. Times of India called it a disturbing mystery still unfolding in the forests of Arizona. The narrative quickly became about more than just 2 lives. It was a symbol of how vulnerable teenagers can be in an unpredictable world. But some criticized the coverage for jumping to conclusions, especially the premature focus on mental health before all forensic evidence had been processed. Others pointed fingers at our lax gun control, questioning how an unknown person could have entered a forest and vanished without a trace. With no suspects, the rumor mill ignited. Was it a planned double suicide? Did the teen stumble upon someone dangerous while camping? Could it have been an accidental shooting? Was it a hate crime, given that some social posts hinted at bullying in recent months? To date, none of these theories have been confirmed. What remains most haunting are the partial shoe prints found leading away from the site. They suggest the presence of a third person. But so far, no one has come forward. Arizona is a state of extremes, beauty and danger. Summer camping, while popular, brings risks: dehydration, animal encounters, fire hazards, and tragically, in some cases, human violence. Local publications like AZ Big Media offer safety tips. Camp with a group. inform someone of your plans, stay in designated areas, and always bring a satellite phone. The victims in this case may have followed some of those rules, but perhaps not all. They camped in a less-known area with limited cell signal. It's possible that, had they been in a busier location, help might have arrived sooner. But in the vast wilderness, even 1 hour can be the difference between life and death. As of early June 2025, autopsies are still under review. Toxicology reports are pending. No weapon has been recovered. No official suspects have been named. Law enforcement continues to urge anyone who is in the area between May 23rd to 25th to come forward. The families of the victims have asked for privacy, but they've also released statements pleading for justice and answers. One parent wrote, "Our child was not suicidal. Our child loved life. We need someone to tell us what happened out there." 2 young souls, taken in the stillness of the forest. A community left haunted by silence and secrecy, and an investigation still searching for its truth. What happened in the Arizona pines that Memorial Day weekend? Was it a tragic accident, a carefully executed crime, or something even more unthinkable? We may never know the full story, but we will remember them, and we will keep asking the questions that matter, because justice, no matter how long it takes, is a story that must be told. Thank you for joining us on The Dark Stories. If this story moved you, please like, comment, and subscribe. Share your thoughts. What do you believe happened in those woods? And as always, stay safe, stay curious, and never stop seeking the truth.
Welcome to the Deep Dive.
Great to be here.
Today, we're taking on, well, a really significant topic. We're digging into a stack of sources that are pretty complex, but also really important.
Yeah, it's quite a range we've got.
We're going from the incredibly detailed science of how gunshot wounds impact the body, all the way up to the real-world scale through hard numbers from a specific community.
And then bringing it right back down to the human level, unfortunately, with a recent tragic story.
Exactly. So think of it as looking through 3 different lenses today.
Right. You've got the forensic scientist's microscope kind of zooming way in.
Then the public health statistician's view, the big picture spreadsheet.
And finally, the journalist's focus on the individual lives affected. It's a deep dive, really, designed to give you a shortcut to understanding this whole multifaceted issue.
Precisely, and the sources reflect that structure. We have a detailed article from Stat Pearls on the forensic pathology side, really gets into the medical science.
Deep stuff.
Then we switch gears, pretty dramatically actually, to an official report. It's the 2022 annual breakdown from the Maricopa County Office of the Medical Examiner in Arizona, packed with stats on causes of death.
Yeah, lots of data there.
And finally, we'll look at a news article that, well, it puts a face to those numbers, reports on a specific, very sad case.
So our mission here, it's pretty crucial. We want to sift through all this, pull out the key nuggets, the surprising bits, the main insights.
We want to show you what the forensic experts are looking for, what the numbers tell us about the impact, and, connect those layers for you.
Let's get into it.
All right, let's unpack this. So let's kick off with the science piece. That Stat Pearls source, it's a really fascinating look at gunshot wounds, but specifically from the forensic pathologist's angle.
Yeah, it's all about understanding the mechanics, the physical evidence left behind.
What's the main role of the forensic pathologist when they encounter one of these injuries?
Well, they're kind of like detectives for the body in these cases. It's way more than just, finding the hole. They have to identify the wound, sure, but then figure out the direction the bullet came from, estimate the distance the gun was fired from, and crucially, classify the manner of death from their medical perspective.
Right.
Was it suicide, homicide, accidental? They're piecing together the story the body tells.
And it's not just the bullet itself causing the injury, is it? The source mentions all this other stuff coming out of the gun.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's a key part. When a gun fires, you get this burst of, everything.
Yeah.
Flame, hot gases, smoke, tiny bits of unburnt powder, even little metal scrapings, grease from the barrel.
And those aren't just random.
Not at all. They're clues. that can embed in skin or clothing and give vital information about how close the gun was, maybe the sequence of events. Really important details.
I was struck by the part about the two kinds of cavities a bullet creates. There's the permanent one, obviously, the hole.
Yeah.
But also something called a temporary cavity. What's that about?
Yes, and this is a really key forensic insight the source emphasizes. It's not just the drilling effect. As the bullet zips through tissue, it pushes everything outwards incredibly fast.
Like a shockwave.
Exactly. Creates this temporary cavity that might, just for a millisecond, be much larger than the bullet itself. Now, it collapses back down almost instantly.
Okay.
But those forces, the stretching, the tearing, the compression, they can cause significant damage, especially to solid organs like the liver or spleen, even tissue that wasn't directly in the bullet's permanent path. Understanding that temporary effect is vital for assessing the true extent of the injury.
So how does a pathologist systematically examine a wound to figure all this out? What's the process?
They're very methodical, as the source lays out. They document the basics, type, size, shape, where it is on the body.
Right.
But their real focus is on the story. Was it an entry or an exit? What was the distance? The direction? Was a person alive when the injury occurred? They look at every single detail, inside and around the wound.
I imagine things can complicate that, right? Like clothing or decomposition.
Oh, absolutely. Big time. Anything that changes how the wound looks is a challenge. Clothing can block residue, decomposition alters tissue, a bullet might ricochet or break apart.
Fragmentation, yeah.
Exactly. All these add layers of complexity the pathologist has to sort through and account for.
You mentioned finding the bullet itself, retrieving the projectile during the autopsy. How does that help identify the gun?
So that's where ballistics comes in. If the gun has a rifled barrel, like most pistols and rifles do, the barrel has these spiral grooves, the rifling.
Right.
As the bullet travels down the barrel, those grooves leave microscopic scratches, unique markings on the bullet surface. They're like fingerprints for the gun.
So they can match it.
Well, some marks are class characteristics. They tell you the type of gun, maybe the manufacturer, the caliber. Like this came from a 9mm Glock. But then there are individual characteristics. Tiny imperfections, unique scrapes, and nicks inside that specific barrel. If they recover a bullet from a scene or a body, and they have a suspect weapon, they can test fire it. And compare the markings on the test bullet to the evidence bullet under a comparison microscope. If they match, you can say that specific gun fired that bullet. It's incredibly detailed work.
Wow. The source also talks about analyzing gunshot residue, GSR. That's the stuff you hear about in crime shows, right?
Right. Finding GSR is key to figuring out if someone fired a gun or was just nearby when it went off. The source mentions the gold standard method, SEMEDX.
Which is?
Basically, using a powerful scanning electron microscope combined with X-ray analysis to find and identify microscopic particles characteristic of primer discharge.
Like specific elements.
Exactly.
Right.
Traditionally, they look for a unique combination of lead, antimony, and barium. If you find particles with all three, that's considered characteristic GSR.
But ammo is changing.
It is. More lead-free primers are being used now, so they contain different elements. Forensic labs are adapting, looking for other combinations. Some police ammo even has signature elements added, like gallium or gadolinium, specifically to help trace it.
That's clever.
Yeah, and they can even do some analysis now that might give a rough idea of when the gun was fired, like within the last 5 hours or longer ago. Another potential clue.
Fascinating. Going back to the wound itself, what are the specific visual things they look for right around the opening?
Okay, so beyond the hole, two classic features the source describes are the abrasion rim.
Abrasion rim.
Yeah, it's like a little scraped or roughened ring of skin right around the edge of the entry wound.
Yeah.
It happens because the bullet kind of indents and scrapes the skin as it pushes in.
Got it.
And the other is often a grease collar. That's just lubricant or residue wiped off the bullet onto the very edge of the wound. These are often good signs you're looking at an entry wound.
And you mentioned distance earlier. That must change the look dramatically.
Oh, profoundly. It's one of the most critical factors. If the gun is pressed right against the skin, a contact wound, you might even see an imprint of the muzzle burned or bruised onto the skin.
Wow.
And the hot gases get forced into the wound, which can cause really ragged, sometimes star-shaped tears, especially if there's bone right underneath. The gas reflects back and causes an explosive effect.
Okay, what about a bit further away?
A little further, near contact or close range, maybe within a few inches, you might see actual flame burns, like scorching or singeing of hair around the wound.
Right.
Then you get to mid-range or intermediate range.
Yeah.
Here, you start seeing soot or smoke deposited around the wound. That's called soiling. And you also get tattooing.
Tattooing, like ink.
Not ink, but tiny particles of unburnt gunpowder, maybe metal fragments, blasted out of the barrel. They get embedded right into the skin like microscopic tattoos. They won't wash off.
And further out, distant range.
At a distance, you typically only see the effects of the bullet itself making the hole. Maybe that abrasion rim and grease color we talked about. The other stuff, the flame, smoke, powder, doesn't reach that far. These patterns are absolutely critical clues for estimating the firing distance.
The source gives some typical ranges for these, right? Though it says they vary.
It does give some rough guides, yeah. Like for small arms, maybe flame effects up to about 15 centimeters, smoking gas out to 15, 30 centimeters, powder tattooing, maybe 30, 60 centimeters, sometimes more. But large arms, like rifles, can project things further.
But you can't just rely on a chart.
Absolutely not. The critical point the source makes, and it's really important, is that these are just general ideas. You have to test the specific firearm and the specific ammunition involved in the case to know for sure how far those components travel from that gun. Every gun ammo combination is slightly different.
Makes sense. And shotguns must be completely different again with all the pellets.
Totally different ballgame, yeah. Smoothbore firearms, like shotguns, don't fire a single bullet. They fire a charge, typically multiple lead or steel pellets, plus a wad component that separates the powder from the pellets.
So the pattern changes with distance too?
Drastically. It depends mostly on how much those pellets spread out. Very close, say within a foot or so, they all hit together, creating one large, ragged wound.
Okay.
As the distance increases, the pellets start to spread. Maybe at a meter, you see a central hole from the main mass of pellets, but also some smaller, separate pellet holes around the edge of satellite wounds.
Mm-hmm.
At longer distances, say 10 meters or more, the pellets might be completely dispersed, causing multiple small, separate injuries rather than one big central one, and things like choking the barrel also affect the spread.
So you need to test the specific shotgun too?
Definitely. Just like with rifles and pistols, interpreting shotgun wound patterns accurately requires testing that specific weapon with the same type of ammunition.
It's just incredible how much information is packed into the physical details of these injuries.
It really is. This whole scientific breakdown shows us how forensic pathology treats these wounds not just as injuries, but as complex physical events. They use every detail, from microscopic bullet marks to skin patterns, to piece together exactly what happened.
Okay, so we've seen the incredibly detailed science, how these injuries are analyzed forensically. Now, let's kind of zoom out and look at the broader impact, the scale, using the numbers from the Maricopa County Medical Examiner's 2022 report.
Right. The Maricopa County Office of the Medical Examiner, the OME, plays a really vital public health role there. They investigate deaths that aren't from natural causes or are sudden, unexplained things like accidents, suicides, homicides.
What's their process generally?
It involves scene investigation, detailed medical exams or autopsies, toxicology testing, the whole 9 yards. And a core function, which this report details, is classifying the manner of death.
Right, the categories.
Accident, natural, suicide, homicide, or undetermined. It's important to remember these are medical classifications they determine after their full investigation.
And the number that just jumps off the page from this 2022 report regarding firearms, it's really significant.
It is stark. The report states that in 2022 alone, the Maricopa County OME investigated 863 firearm-related deaths.
Wow. 863 deaths in one county, in 1 year, linked to firearms. How did those break down by manner of death?
So looking at that big number, 863, the report shows the majority, 56%, were classified as suicides.
Okay.
42% were homicides. And then a very small percentage were ruled accidents. That was 0.8% or undetermined 0.9%.
That 863 figure, it takes on even more weight when you compare it to other causes of death, right? That was a surprising point in the report.
It really puts the scale into perspective. The report explicitly notes that firearm-related deaths cause more deaths in Maricopa County each year than traffic injuries.
More than car crashes.
More than traffic injuries, yes, in every single year since 2015, with only one exception, which was 2021. And the trend is increasing. The overall rate of firearm deaths went up 11% just from 2021 to 2022. And compared to 2015, it's up a striking 46%. That comparison to traffic deaths really flags this as a major public health burden in that community, according to their data.
Let's look a bit closer then. How do firearms specifically factor into suicides and homicides in the county?
Well, for suicides, sadly, firearms are the most common method used in Maricopa County. They accounted for 59% of all suicides in 2022. And the rate of firearm suicides specifically went up 7% that year.
And for homicides?
Overwhelmingly the primary means. The report shows firearms were involved in 82% of all homicides in 2022. That's 361 individual cases.
82%.
Yeah. And the overall homicide rate itself was the highest it's been since the OME started their database back in 1991.
Yep.
The firearm homicide rate specifically saw a huge jump up 19% from 2021 and an absolute massive 109% increase since 2014.
Goodness. The report also included data on the ages involved, right?
Yes, it does. The graphs and data show that firearm deaths impact people across a really wide age spectrum. It reflects the demographics you see in suicides and homicides generally, from young adults right through to older populations.
And there was specific data focusing on children and adolescents under 18.
Yes, and this section of the report is particularly sobering. In 2022, there were 258 total ME cases involving individuals under 18.
Okay.
If you focus just on the adolescent group, 13 to 17 years old, there were 115 cases in total. And tragically, 37 deaths in that specific adolescent age group were from gunshot wounds in 2022.
37 kids aged 13 to 17.
Yes. Now, that number was the same as 2021, but it represented a 28% increase compared to 2020.
How did those 37 adolescent firearm deaths break down by manner?
For that group, 13 to 17, the report classifies 24 as homicides, 9 as suicides, 3 as accidents, and 1 as undetermined. And it also notes that firearms were the second most frequent method for suicide, specifically within this adolescent age group, accounting for 31% of teen suicides.
The report also talked quite a bit about drug-related deaths, right? High numbers, fentanyl, methamphetamine. Does it directly link those to the firearm deaths?
It definitely lays out the significant and growing problem of drug-related deaths overall. It notes the high rates, the increasing role of methamphetamine alongside fentanyl.
Right.
And it does discuss how drug use can be a factor in the circumstances surrounding some deaths, like contributing to accidents or suicides. However, the way the report presents the data, it generally treats the firearm death counts and the drug death counts as distinct analyses based on the primary cause or instrument of death. So that 863 firearm death number is separate from the overall drug death statistics.
Okay, got it. And there was also data about deaths among people experiencing homelessness.
Yes, another concerning trend highlighted was a 42% increase in ME cases involving individuals experiencing homelessness, reaching 752 cases in 2022.
And the cause there?
Drug-related deaths were the most common cause identified for that specific group. Interestingly, methamphetamine was more common than fentanyl in those cases.
But does it say how many involved firearms?
The report doesn't break down the means of death, like firearms versus other causes, specifically within the homeless population subgroup. It provides the overall county data we discussed for firearm deaths by manner, suicide, homicide, etc., but not that specific cross-section.
Understood. Well, these numbers from the Maricopa County report, they certainly paint a very clear and frankly very difficult picture, just the sheer impact of firearm injuries in this one community.
Absolutely. They provide a stark statistical window into that burden. The data clearly shows how and where these injuries tragically cut lives short, and based on the ME's findings, really highlights them as a major public health challenge in that area.
So we've looked at the intricate science of analyzing these injuries, and we've seen the sobering scale through the data. Now let's acknowledge that behind every single one of those statistics is a person, a life, families grieving. We have a news article here about a specific deeply tragic case that really brings the human element into sharp focus.
Yeah, this article reports on the deaths of 2 young people. They were students at Arcadia High School, Evan Clark and Pandora Kjolsrud.
The article states they were found shot to death near Mount Ord on May 27th, 2025.
And it makes that direct connection back to the data we were just discussing. The article mentions the county medical examiner classified their deaths as homicides.
What really stands out, though, are the quotes from their mothers that the article includes. Evan Clark's mother described him as, quote, "my only child and my beloved son."
So personal.
Yeah, highlighting how funny, bright, kind, and entrepreneurial he was, emphasizing he was special and deserved a long life. Just heartbreaking.
It really is. And Pandora Kjolsrud's mother shared that Pandora was, quote, "a bright light in this world who loved every single person she met." She said Pandora had this unusual ability to make every person she met feel special and loved.
Wow.
And added that she lived life in a big way and was always up for an adventure.
It's just devastating. The article notes the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office is still investigating this as a homicide, and they're asking for any information the public might have.
Right. And this specific case, hearing those deeply personal words from their mothers, it's just a powerful, gut-wrenching reminder, isn't it? A reminder of the individual human tragedy represented by every single number in those statistics we just talked about. The profound ripple effect these losses have.
Absolutely. This has been quite a layered deep dive today, moving through really different scales of understanding this complex topic. We started way down at the intricate science.
Yeah, how forensic pathologists analyze the physical evidence, looking at everything from microscopic residue, powder patterns, wound characteristics, trying to reconstruct events.
Then we zoomed way out to the population level, looking at those stark numbers from the Maricopa County Medical Examiner's report.
Right, that showed us the sheer prevalence, the impact of firearm-related deaths just in that one community in 2022, revealing those patterns in suicides, homicides, and that really striking comparison to traffic fatalities.
And finally, we brought it back to the individual, acknowledging the deep human cost behind every statistic with the tragic story of Evan Clark and Pandora Kjolsrud.
And connecting these layers, it feels crucial, doesn't it? The detailed science gives us the tools to understand individual cases. The aggregated data helps us see the bigger patterns, the societal burden, and the personal stories. They remind us why it all matters, the irreplaceable lives behind the numbers.
It really is a journey from the almost invisible forensic details up to the overwhelming scale of the statistics and then right back down to the most personal impact imaginable.
Exactly. So maybe something to think about is this. How do those meticulous findings from just one forensic exam, identifying a specific powder pattern, noting an abrasion rim, how do those tiny details build up into that large statistical picture that the medical examiner compiles? And then how does that aggregated data, those big numbers, how does that, in turn, inform our understanding? How might it shape efforts to prevent future tragedies like the one we heard about with Evan and Pandora? What stands out to you when you try to connect the science, the stats, and the stories?